Now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Thank you for joining us live on Daybreak this morning for the review of the headlines.
You're welcome, Benga. Good morning. How are you today?
Looking bright this morning, I must confess.
Thank you. And Yolanda, we are twinning.
Yes, we are. We are different shades of twinning, but twinning nonetheless.
I hope it comes with a very pleasant omen.
Yeah, Nigerian day, green, white, green.
I like that.
Yeah, okay, good to see you guys.
Likewise.
Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with This Day newspaper. In This Day today, Nigeria's $2.35 billion Eurobond oversubscribed by $10.65 billion. And as Trump military threat looms, FJ insists claim of Christian genocide based on faulty data. Man declares support for 15% import tariff on petrol, diesel. The Daily Independent, how Nigeria lost $300 billion to crude oil theft by Senate. That's according to an investigation that the report has just been made known. PDP BOT moves to resolve crisis in party, restore unity. And moving on to Vanguard newspaper. Foreign lobbyists fueling genocide claims in Nigeria, according to the federal government. PDP crisis BOT stays neutral, urges reconciliation. Alleged terrorism, you've last chance to defend yourself, court tells Kano. And Tinubu, Sultan Uzodinma, others headline editors confirm. Nigeria's telecom subscribers hit 173.5 million as broadband penetration reaches 49.3%. That's high. And Senate mouths stiffer penalty for persons ripening fruits with harmful chemicals. That's a good one. Daily Trust, contractors protest at National Assembly for a second day. And SNSA Abdullahi Mohammed dies at 86. Nigeria rejects country of particular concern designation. We also have other papers. New Telegraph this morning, targeted killings, foreign lobbyists fueling claims, FG. There's that story on PDP there, the crisis and the impending national convention to be or not to be. FG renews plan to sell Port Harcourt, Warri, Kaduna refineries again. The Punch newspaper, power showdown. Wike block defiant as PDP BOT insists on convention. Over 85 people killed as flood wreaks havoc in Philippines. Food imports soar 45% as local production falters. And Tinubu to open editors conference November 12. Other stories, 15% import tariff could make Nigeria fuel producing powerhouse according to refiners. And finally, in the Punch, Marwa fights for second term as 5 rivals close in. The Guardian newspaper, referendum call heightens over elitist constitution reform plot. Tinubu Sultan Uzodinma others headline editors conference. And stop celebrating worthless GDP figures. Oshibanjo warns African governments. Leadership finally for the local papers. Power generation firms seek clear payment framework from the federal government, and this is in regard to the 6 trillion naira subsidy debt. Consumer Protection Commission shuts 5 textile warehouses in Kano, and Senate suspends ministerial nominees' confirmation as National Assembly approves 14-year jail term for sexual harassment. Moving on to the international headlines, let's start with metro.co.uk. Lamy grilled over latest jail bangle. The Guardian newspaper, still on Lamy, a Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is under pressure after 2 more prisoners mistakenly freed. Academics tell of heavy pressure from China. And you have the photo of the new mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani, a historic win there. Moving on to Daily Express, shocking release of Algerian sex attack convict. And Financial Times, China will win AI race with America, says NVIDIA's chief. France suspends chain over childlike sex dolls on its site as Paris store opens. And finally, to the newspaper, manhunt for new missing prisoners as Deputy PM feels heat over blunders. Okay, let's go back to this day newspaper. In this day, what seems like a light bulb moment for the government in the midst of the gloom of the past 1 week. Nigeria's $2.35 billion Eurobond oversubscribed by $10.65 billion. Strong investor confidence excites Tinubu as Minister of Finance. Wale Edu says this illustrates confidence in Nigeria's reforms. So what's this all about? The country's Eurobond issuance attracted others worth $13 billion, which represents an oversubscription of 453%. This data was shared by the Debt Management Office, and experts say this is an indication of continued global faith in Nigeria's economy, in spite of all that's currently going on, particularly the designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern by the United States. Yolanda, a reprieve for the government, it seems, your sense?
Dr. Constance, it's an interesting headline that you're holding today. And I mean, you mentioned a lot of things, including what we've been seeing with this whole CPC movement. You know, the foreign lobbyists who are now fueling this genocide. It's just good to see that for once, the Nigerian political environment seems to come together, even though it's looking like, you know, we are all going against the same problem. Correct me if I'm wrong, Benga. You mentioned earlier about how this was being lobbied by sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
So let's stay on the Eurobond yes. for a moment, because okay. That story on the
oh, you had mentioned
on the CPC
yes.
will come back, but on the Eurobond. So one of the things that we have to look at here is that yes, it is good news that Nigerian Eurobond is oversubscribed. But one of the reasons is that Nigerian Eurobonds have very high returns. You know that most markets cannot match. And one of the other reasons is that it is secured by the government. It is guaranteed. Eurobonds, Nigerian Eurobonds issuance are backed by the federal government. That means that it is secure and guaranteed, and which also means that the government will meet its repayment obligations. So for many markets, that is not the case. In terms of the high returns that investors get. This is about business, so investors will put their money where they think that they will make money and they will make their returns. On the flip side, why issuance of bonds will provide the necessary funding that is needed for infrastructure and for other projects in the countries in order to fuel the economy and different sectors. It also will increase the debt burden of the government, and it will also increase the tax burden on taxpayers. And at the end of the day, it will have to, the government has repayment obligations, long-term repayment obligations to deal with. So there are pros and cons. Yes, it is oversubscribed. At the end of the day, there's also that repayment obligations, and that has to happen. So that's what we're seeing when it comes to that issuance of the Euro bonds. But we have another story in this day that we have to take, which is the second lead story. As Trump military threat looms, FJ insists claim of Christian genocide is based on faulty data, says that terrorist attacks lowest in 10 years, 17,000 people being prosecuted. He did provide more information. 13,500 terrorists were neutralized. A lot of people were also rescued, according to the federal government. The Minister of National Orientation yesterday gave that press conference. And they did talk about Nigeria being open to the U.S., supporting them as well as other partners. So Benga, your thoughts are quickly on this.
Yes, just to clear a misrepresentation, yesterday when I quoted figures that over 7,000 Christians have been killed in the first 7 months of 2025, and some people came, went chumps in a bit and rambunctious to say that it was a lie. We are advocates of responsible journalism here, and we stand on facts and figures, and we are guided by Section 22 of the Constitution that gives us the power to uphold the Constitution and also to hold the government in power accountable. So when I was quoting, I was talking about the reports from the International Society for Civil Liberty and Rule of Law. They were the ones that gave the figure, and this is an institution that strongly advocates for good governance, advancement of democracy, and accountability in Africa. So that's where. So it's not. We are not just a cosmetic screen heads here. We stand as agents of transformation of the society. So I'm happy that the federal government is increasing its seriousness and sense of urgency on this issue of mass killing or terrorism in the country. It said it has neutralized 13,500 terrorists, suspected terrorists, and also arrested about 17,500 terrorists. That's a step in the right direction, but the world wants the government to do more, and that's our role, because killing, even one life, matters a lot. In the International Declaration of Human Rights, it shows that every individual is entitled to his thoughts, conscience, and religion. So on no account or under whatever guise should killing, whether Muslim or even traditional religion or Christians, should be allowed in any part of this country. And we are guided by the Constitution of this country, which completely prohibits that. And that also make reference to the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022. So it shows where the country stands, but we cannot allow complacency. We need more sense of urgency. And I'm happy that that China and even the European Union is coming to terms to show its support for peace and cooperation in Nigeria, respect for human rights, and also interfaith dialogue. So when we look at all these things, we will keep watching, and we hope that the federal government will step up this fight to bring down, completely erase this narrative of Nigeria being designated as a country of particular concern.
Thank you very much, Benga, for that. I'd like to touch on what you said as well, and just say that some of those figures that you did mention were actually mentioned by the Human Rights Watch.
Yes, and even that was what the U.S. Congress is basing it on.
Absolutely, because I touched on those figures as well. So for you to say that, it's very timely, because information can be passed out in the wrong way and be taken in a light that is away from what the truth is actually saying.
Absolutely.
To touch on the CPC, where I had been confused earlier on, let me just clarify that. You know, yesterday we spoke about how China is standing up to support what Nigeria is doing, but we also mentioned that in the background of that, you know, China has its own motives. It's very heavily invested in Nigeria's mining sector, energy, in so many other, you know, areas of the country. So it's only right that they would do that. But also, let's look at some of the facts that we have. Some time ago, one of the American Republic congressmen, I believe Scott Perry, revealed that the U.S. aid was funding Boko Haram. So, I mean, those are facts that we shouldn't be quick to forget. And it's very good that despite the political environment, despite everything that is happening in the country at the moment, it seems like everybody's putting their heads together to say that there is no genocide in Nigeria. So it's very reassuring to see that even though that everybody has their own differences, they do agree that this is just something that is being fueled for a motive that is still yet to be revealed.
All right. That the stakes are high following the kind of rapid response that is coming from the government of Nigeria.
Indeed.
A lot of has been happening. Like I said earlier, the Minister of National Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris, did give a press conference yesterday alongside the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Mr. Dele Alake, and also the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Felix Morka, also granted an interview to Arise Prime Time yesterday night. So all government officials talking about what is happening, Mr. Idris talked about partners coming to support Nigeria, that Nigeria is open and willing. He also acknowledged previous support in terms of weapons that Nigeria has received from the United States, and says Nigeria continues to be open to do more of that. He shared those figures, to show what he says the government is doing. And Mr. Dela Alake also pivoted to another angle, insinuating that people are fueling this genocide narrative. Of course, Nigerian government again denied that there is a genocide going on in Nigeria. There's something also that Mr. Dela Alake touched on when he said that this problem has been on for 10 years. Of course, we know it's more than that, but what he was saying is that the government of President President Bola Tinubu inherited this particular issue, and he also insinuated that in the previous administration it wasn't properly dealt with, and so they have to manage this or handle it as it is today. He is correct that this is a problem that came from the past. But it's also the same APC government. And one thing that is important to draw out from everything that has been said is that decisions have consequences. Elections have consequences. Whatever actions we take have consequences. Because when we think about the previous APC government that he mentioned, the current president, Bola Tinubu, was one of those people that said during the elections, after 4 years of the first term of President Muhammad Buhari, late now, that even if the president was on a wheelchair, he would support him for a second term. And this was making reference to the poor health of the late president, because he was very poorly throughout his 8 years in power. But Mr. Bola Tinubu said he would continue to support him for a second term, even when he saw the underwhelming performance. This suggests a couple of things. Number one, it's either that he did not understand the greater implications of what that meant and how that would impact the country and what mess that would probably land us in, or he had an idea but decided anyway to go ahead and support him in order to also have his own, what he called a miracle turn, after that president's 8 years in office. The bottom line is that we have to think as Nigerians. I mean, when you have a private company, for instance, do you think about the person that you hire as a CEO? The CEO has to be someone that is competent, that is well and alive, and that is able to deliver on the job and is able to deliver results. There is no one that hires a sick CEO. And even when the hiring is done and one finds out later that the CEO is poorly and cannot continue with the job, normally you would set that person aside and hire a new person. So again, elections have consequences. Everywhere in the world, actions and decisions have consequences, and that is what we are seeing in Nigeria. This story will continue to unfold, and we will be bringing you more. Let's stay with this day as we take the third story. Man declares support for 15% import tariff on petrol and diesel, says it's a step towards strengthening local content and patronizing made in Nigeria. This is one of the main points that is being made on this matter. And the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria backing the government on this is a sort of win for the government, Benga, isn't it? Very quickly.
Yeah, when you look at the sectoral report of 2025, the last quarter, you'll discover that the industrial and manufacturing sector were the lowest. So now, with the coming of this introduction of this 15% import tariff on petrol, that is expected, mark my word, expected to strengthen the local refineries and to also to promote the local content acts in the country. That's one side. But if you look at the other side, it's now tailoring the market trend in a particular way that might undermine the other side. And that's when you talk about the local supply sufficiency. We understand that the marketers still supply about 69% to bridge that gap. So what happens to the depot owners and the other petrol importers? So when you look at this, I would have suggested a situation where you open the market, let the local refineries develop themselves, not to undermine the role of the import market, and thereby you will have a gradual bridge into that market situation we have, and that's talking about the local, the development of the local refineries, and thereby everything would, and in line with the global market forces, we would see a desirable economy. But now we can't adopt a knee-jerk approach in the process of trying to help our local refiners. You will see the approach of Dangote Refinery. He's not waiting for government regulation to support him. He has that clear foresight on what to do to expand his investments.
Again, Benga, it is great that you pointed out again sufficiency, because in the interim, the argument is we still import, and what would that do to the price of petrol at the end of the day when you slam that 15% tariff? Well, let's see another paper, New Telegraph. FG renews plan to sell Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries. The special advisor to the president on energy, Oluwasegun, said this in an interview with Bloomberg on the sidelines of the Abu Dhabi International Petroleum Exhibition and Conference. She said this is one of the options that is being explored by the government if the government finds the right technical partner and capital. Another talk about getting rid of the refineries, Yolanda. This was a bit different from what we heard last week from the NNPC boss, Bayo Ojulari, who told Nigerians recently that the refineries will be repurposed. So perhaps maybe on this matter, it may be better for them to talk less and act more, and when they finally decide what they are doing and actually they are doing it, then that information can be shared with the public. It's sort of conflicting statements here.
It's quite exhausting that we're having this conversation again. I think it has come up several times in the past. And the only thing that comes straight to mind is the issue of asset management and, the fact about public policy. These refineries have been long underutilized, and this conversation has been coming and going several times, even over the year. And I'd also wonder, what is the end goal in all of this? Is it to get rid of it because the country is overwhelmed by it, or is it to actually bring about a refinery that has a future for Nigeria? I want to touch a little bit on what Benga had spoken about earlier concerning the fuel. When it comes to fuel, it's a very sensitive political commodity when it comes to Nigeria, because the government's ability to manage what we have is very important. And at the end of the day, what's most important is how does this affect the everyday person?
Oh, right.
We were speaking about how the rising fuel costs are going to affect people, especially in this festive season that's coming. But fuel doesn't only affect just the buying and selling, it affects everything across board, transporting of goods, transporting of food. And so there's a lot to look at in all of this. And what is the bigger goal? That's my question for the day.
Big question. Now let's move quickly and see what we can take. We still have 2 more papers for the local scene. Daily Independent, how Nigeria lost $300 billion to crude oil theft by Senate. Plans phasing out petrol cars, considers electric vehicle bill. So this information right here was provided by the Senate committee investigating sabotage of oil installations and crude oil theft. And the committee report has been presented. It recommends measures to tackle crude oil theft, including setting up and enforcing internationally accepted crude oil measurement standards, and at all production sites and export terminals, equipping security agencies and the rest of them. I mean, measurement standard at all production sites and export terminals has been suggested severally in the past. We never got around to doing that. So if the government truly wants to do this, it can be done. I mean, it's not that difficult, but indications are that opaqueness and inefficiency allows vested interests to maintain the status quo. Actually, that's what is status quo. Okay, let's see the Guardian newspaper. Former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says, stop celebrating worthless GDP figures. He was warning African governments. So he was speaking at the Ford Foundation in West Africa's 65th anniversary. The African countries that are fastest growing in GDP is okay, but he says, at the same time, it remains the poorest country in terms of quality of life for its people. He shared his experience as vice president, where he said, when discussing GDP figures, that people didn't want to listen to that, and he was frustrated as a public servant because it was not necessarily changing people's lives. So he has called for a trickle-down approach. Very important, point that he has made here, because we do know that GDP measures, the monetary value of goods and services produced within a specific period of time. And the size of the economy, it does not necessarily mean that lives have been improved. The other better indicator for improved lives is the Human Development Index, which talks about life expectancy, education, and income per capita. Those measure the quality of life of people, how education, healthcare, all those things are affecting people's lives. So that is where the government needs to focus on, instead of just the GDP. So moving on to the international headlines, let's see what we have here. Newspaper, please, if you can pull that up. Battle of New York City. President Trump plots revenge against the new socialist mayor, Zoran Mamdani. So the big question is how does Zoran Mamdani, who is a fresh face, how does he govern New York? He made promises. He has very little executive experience, although he was elected as lawmaker in 2020 and re-elected without opposition in 2022 and 2024. So he's the first Muslim mayor of New York and first of South Asian descent, born in Uganda. A lot ahead of him. And to Daily Mail, shocking release of Algerian sex attack convict, and Metro.co.uk, Lamy grilled over latest jail bangle. Yolanda, over to you.
Very interesting points there brought up today, especially on this mayor of New York. I mean, you've mentioned all the things that make him stand out, the fact that he was born in Uganda, the fact that he's Muslim, the fact that he's young. There's so much to look forward to, but the question is, can he walk the walk? Because clearly he has talked the talk that has brought him to where he is. But you have a lot of critics, talking about his lack of experience and what he's going to bring to the table. So we just hope that when he takes office on January the 1st, he is able to, meet up to expectations, especially now that he's been seen as this very youthful kind of Gen Z type of, leader. Is he able to now balance that with leading a state like New York, which is, very
large city.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With huge challenges.
Absolutely. And so I think the expectations there are very high. Moving over to the UK, where there's the release of this Algerian sex attack convict. It's a very sad story, but I think what is less shown and spoken about is the fact that when he was released from prison, he actually hung around. He hung around the jail, went back to the prison wardens and told them that he was wrongfully let out. And then they told him, look, get away from here, go away, because you're not speaking accurately. And he hung around the jail for about 4 to 5 hours. There's a lot of CCTV footage that shows that he tried to, convince them that he was wrongfully let out. And this is such a big embarrassment for the government of the UK, that they would let something like this happen not once or twice. I believe if the headline was said right, there were 2 other convicts that were let out shortly after him. So very, very embarrassing for David Lammy, and I hope that the UK is able to secure itself a little bit better in such sensitive areas.
Well, Prime Minister Keir Starmer really under fire in that country. Successive. It's like back to back.
Yes.
Well, good luck to them. That's all we can take on the paper review this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Constance.